We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Does diversity, equity, and inclusion signal the death knell for the US military? What lies ahead for a fractured America? And will the Supreme Court of the United States be the savior of the constitutional republic? These are the questions that we'll hopefully find the answers for in this week's special edition of Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. We'll be tracking the latest military recruitment numbers, asking why Los Angeles refuses to admit it has an addiction to illegal immigration, and a whole lot more. Now, I'd like to say a special thank you to our listeners across the country for tuning in and joining us today. And remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. Thanks for being here. Well, let's get started. In the United States of America, it's getting tough to get workers. No place more so than the United States military. Now, somebody who's been writing on this topic and has looked deep into the causes, the reasons, the ramifications, and the possible futures is Liberty Nation's military affairs correspondent, who also happens to be the former Deputy Undersecretary of Defense Comptroller and a retired Air Force pilot himself, Mr. Dave Patterson. Welcome back to the show, Dave.
Hi, Mark. Happy to be with you.
So, Dave, military recruitment, it's, we see it all the time. Now, there's a lot of talk about, well, it's benefits, well, it's career prospects, but that's not your view, is it, Dave?
No, it's not. I believe that people join the military for far more patriotic reasons and because, and family reasons as well. Their families have been in the military, and it has proven to be an excellent career choice and a way of life. And it's that basic draw that I think brings young people into the military. And it is also the very same thing that is causing them to stay away. It's the exact opposite now. You're hearing reports that family members would not recommend the military to their children or to their young relatives, and it's because, quite simply, that the Biden administration has done everything they possibly can to persuade people to stay out of the military. It doesn't represent the character traits that we as Americans have always thought and held dear.
Well, so there used to be a thing called the generational soldier, which was grandparents in the military, usually grandfathers, of course, for the most part, then fathers, then sons and daughters would, they'd spend their life shipping around the world, as pads brats, as we call them in the British military, and they'd be on base there, and it would be a career to go into, and it's something that they were proud of doing. They're following in the family footsteps. But you say that this is because of the Biden administration, but isn't it also because there was almost after Vietnam, I guess, that there was a lot of people coming home, and there were, the talk of the baby killers in Vietnam, and that they weren't the heroes of the Second World War anymore, and that kind of got swept up into a cultural morass where being a soldier wasn't a values-driven thing anymore, or it wasn't recognized as being a values-driven thing anymore.
I think that there's a certain amount of truth in what you say. However, the dynamics of the time were extremely important in how all of that worked out in 1973, when you went from a conscripted military to an all-volunteer military that had a great deal to do with it, a decision to downsize the military to a certain extent, and though you had some gaps, it tended not to be as troubling as it is today. And again, I go back to this. What are the values? And if you read the stuff I write, I sort of rail against this notion that the military should be a mirror of society. No, you want the military to be better than the society. You're a dad and you say, oh boy, I've got two sons. One's a Marine fighter and the other is a chief drag queen mate on the USS, Christian Dior. No, Nobody wants that as an image. I mean, honestly.
Although there was a popular song called "In the Navy" back in the late 70s, I believe.
Yeah, right. Wasn't that by let's see who did
It's
that.
the Village People, right?
Village People, of
Yeah.
course. The paragon of values that we all look forward to.
Sure. Now, so you say that Joe Biden's really bringing this recruitment debacle to a head in what he's doing now, policy-wise. What would you say that is?
I think that the obvious example of what has happened is you just had a recent House passed a National Defense Authorization Act for FY 2024, and in it they said, no, we're not going to have diversity, equity, and inclusion as our primary standard barometer for whether or not we're going to be a capable military. And oh, by the way, no, we're not going to have drag queen shows for as a family event. And the other thing that it has come to the fore and is this notion that the Pentagon has taken it upon themselves to be the social justice warriors and take on social issues which, as the leadership, which they have never done before, like the abortion issue. They're circumventing the law in order to satisfy the whims of people who want to have abortions.
So there's the DIE, die as Jordan Peterson calls it, although DEI is the
right. No, he's right.
He's right. But yeah, diversity, equity, and inclusion. The idea that these three tenets can make a more effective fighting force. I mean, what do you really want from your army? You want them to be the best at hurting people and blowing up their stuff, right? That's what you want.
Killing and breaking their stuff. Right.
Killing and breaking their stuff. Now, equity. Explain to me, Dave, if you can, how equity fits into that.
Sure. What they're looking for is equality of outcome. That's equity. That means that everybody gets the same when the sausage comes out the end of the grinder, whereas equality is the opportunity to be what you want to be. And we want as a military, we want the opportunity for everyone to reach their capability, not to lower. Equity is an egalitarian concept.
Yeah.
Whereas equality is an opportunity concept, and that's the concept on which this nation was built.
I agree completely. The idea that everybody should end up at the exact same point is it's almost ludicrous, because especially in a military structure, because, well, why aren't I a general?
Yeah, good point.
And why isn't the guy next door to me? Why isn't he a general? Don't we all deserve to be generals if that's our equity? Dave, final question for you here. And I don't go too dystopian, even though I know that we both love the dystopian stuff. Where do you see this going for the United States military if it continues on this course of pushing DEI or DIE?
So I think that if you look at the history of the United States, we put up with this nonsense up to a point, and then we do this rather drastic reaction to things. And I think that what's going to happen here is that we will react to this, and in a way that perhaps will go a little bit too far. But nonetheless, I think that the life expectancy for DEI is rapidly reducing, and it will. People will certainly realize very quickly. And the battlefield is the equalizer. Yeah. You send these clowns out there, and they won't last long. And so it tends to be the reality and the practical aspects of real life that will probably take care of this problem.
A fighting force for the parade ground rather than the battlefield. Dave Patterson, thank you ever so much.
Hey, thank you, Mark.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Don't get caught up in the media madness. Join our movement for free thinking and free speech at libertynation.com. Publishing news and analysis 24/7 with original articles by our team of authors who tell it like it is. Join us each week for online TV shows, The Uprising Podcast, and Liberty Nation Radio. We believe in free thinking and free speech. We are libertynation.com.